Well, Trump is back in office. Some people are optimistic and enthusiastic, and other people are terrified. And you know what? They both have valid points. So I'm going to break down kind of the whole thing and good points from the left and the right and everything in between right now. Hello and welcome to Cylinder Radio. I'm Will Roosh, educator in Los Angeles that is very into viewpoint diversity. It's viewpoint diversity, it's civil discourse, it's critical thinking. That's my jam. And with Trump back in office, this is like the biggest story of the day. Okay, of course. Okay, so Donald Trump is the most polarizing figure that we have in this country, and he's back in. And I think that there's an interesting opportunity here to really pull apart different things. If you are enthusiastic about Trump being back in office, I get it. Okay, I said on here, publicly about how I voted for Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that he should have a free pass. And there aren't things that are very important that the people who didn't vote for him and didn't want him in office, that there aren't important things that they're bringing up that we, Trump supporters should be looking for. So that's kind of what I'm calling here for. And if you are on the other side, if you are terrified of Trump being back in office, you think that this is really, really dangerous, this is really, really bad, I'm going to have some things that you can look towards as helping you to navigate this time as well. Okay, so I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. This is just an extension of my classroom that I've been in for the past 2 decades. So let's get into it. First of all, in his last moments in office, Joe Biden decided to pardon people, more specifically, preemptively pardon, the way he did with his son, which is basically like you can't be prosecuted for crimes that happened in the past. So General Mark Milley, because of some of the conversations he had with China, was famously criticized by Donald Trump. Donald Trump said things like, that's treason and that could be punishable by death. And so he talked about, going after Mark Milley for the things that he did. And that's one person that was pardoned. People on the January 6th committee, the ones who were going after Donald Trump, saying that he was responsible for the insurrection, as they called it, on January 6th. Members of that were preemptively pardoned. But then Anthony Fauci, and I think that's the most interesting one, because Anthony Fauci, under Trump, was, charged with running a lot of things when it came to COVID. And then things came out. Anthony Fauci was one of the people that I heard Dr. Drew talk about. This is like early COVID. This is like before it even, shut everything down, so late February of 2020. Dr. Drew said, Anthony Fauci, he's the guy to go to. Now, at that point, I hadn't read RFK's book about Anthony Fauci. If you're not familiar, it's worth looking into what Anthony Fauci did with the AIDS epidemic and everything. Very, very interesting. But I wasn't aware of that. So we thought Anthony Fauci was the guy. Even Dr. Drew now is like, what Anthony Fauci did was bad. People have kind of woken up to some of the things that Anthony Fauci did. It's a whole slew of different things. When Anthony Fauci says criticizing me is like criticizing science, that sounds goofy. When Anthony Fauci said that he never told the schools to shut down, and then there's video of him saying like, yeah, I recommend that they shut down the schools. There's stuff like that just rubs people the wrong way. The way that COVID was handled, Anthony Fauci, in defense of him, was kind of doing his job, which is focus on this disease. He's not an economist. So when he says shut everything down, he's not thinking from like an economic standpoint. Okay, he's also not a psychologist, so he's not thinking from a mental health standpoint. But yet he was given a lot of power by Trump and then by Biden to kind of run the show when it came to COVID. And I think that we were so focused on this one virus that we weren't thinking about all of the other negative things. And I watched it firsthand. I watched the mental health toll that it took on kids. I watched as economies grew, or shrunk. I'm sorry. My wife works with a bunch of small businesses in the beauty industry, and over the last 4 years, every single beauty business, it seems like, is saying this is the worst we've ever had it. Okay, so some of the economic downturn is a result of a lot of the shutdowns and things. We paid people to stay at home. Remember, laying on your couch made you a hero just a couple of years ago. There's a lot of that stuff. So because of that, people are angry at Anthony Fauci, and Trump being a populist, he's saying, I'm going to go after Anthony Fauci. They obviously, butted heads. And, people also don't like, Anthony Fauci being on the cover of GQ and stuff like that, throwing out the first pitch. He kind of, he seemed to really like that celebrity element. People are like, in Fauci we trust and stuff. I think he got caught up in that. It seems like he got caught up in that. But anyway, people were going after Anthony Fauci, and Trump, as a populist, said, I'm going to go after him. So he's preemptively pardoned from any crimes that he might do. Now, this does feed this narrative that Trump is going to be a dictator and just going after all of his political enemies. Like, he has his enemies list. Okay, it does feed into that. But it also feeds into this idea that the Democrats are doing things to make themselves above the law. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was asked, is she going to go to the inauguration? And she said, well, because I don't support rapists, no, I won't. Now, first of all, ABC News has been sued for millions upon millions of dollars for saying that Donald Trump is a rapist when that was not the charge and that's not what happened. So she needs to be careful with that, okay? Because she's just using that kind of very powerful rhetoric. But also, Joe Biden had very credible allegations from a woman named Tara Reid when he was a senator about him sexually assaulting her. Or what about Bill Clinton? If you're not familiar with the Juanita Broderick story, that is a very credible accusation of rape against that former president. But is this just like another double standard where AOC doesn't like Republican rapists, but is okay with Democratic rapists? There is that element. But it does feed this narrative that Trump is going to be above the law. And that's kind of what he's all about when it comes to these pardons. But my question is, where is your faith in the justice system? Okay? Because when the issues of voter fraud come up, like the 2020 election was fraudulent and it was stolen election and everything. One of the things that I point to saying that it wasn't fraudulent was that I say the justice system needs to be trusted. When the courts look at the evidence, they say, what, there's not enough here to pursue this. We have to trust the court system. Court systems obviously get things wrong all the time. There are bad Supreme Court decisions all the time. Okay. But we have to trust to some degree. Otherwise, all institutional trust goes away. And then that is just a perfect vacuum, a perfect storm for a very dangerous dictator to come in. Okay. So we do have to trust some institutions. But the faith in the justice system was obviously there for the 2020 election, but why is the faith in the justice system not there on the Democratic side for pursuing General Milley or Anthony Fauci? If Anthony Fauci didn't do anything wrong, then the courts would not pursue that or would not, find him guilty. It's like Donald Trump can't just lock you up in prison. Okay. And if he did that, which would be illegal, like a real dictator move, then it doesn't matter if he has an official piece of paper pardon anyway. Okay. So I think that the undermining the criminal justice system is dangerous. And I think that's part of what happened here. But also, once you start pardoning people like this, then it opens up for everybody. It sets a precedent for all presidents. And I'm guessing that Donald Trump is going to start pardoning people right away too. Probably people who were involved in January 6th. Okay, there are a lot of people who were involved in January 6th who just walked in a door and didn't destroy property, didn't hurt anybody, and they're sitting in jail cells still, like after years. There are people that are still in that situation. So perhaps letting them go, especially the nonviolent offenders, is something that we're going to see from Donald Trump. But going back to the optimism that a lot of people have right now over Donald Trump, I think a lot of it is economic. I think that people go back to pre-COVID days and they go, things were like way better. Like the economy was doing well. And when I say the economy, I'm not talking about like the calculations. When I say the economy is bad, a lot of people are like, well, that's not true. Biden has a really thriving economy. Look at these numbers. Economic numbers are easy to manipulate. You should know that. Like how they calculate that is easy to manipulate. It's kind of like how they calculate unemployment. Okay, unemployment is you want a job, you need a job, and you're actively searching for a job. Well, if that third one pops off, you're not actively searching anymore because you've given up, then you're not actually unemployed by definition, and they can say the unemployment numbers are no longer high. But you don't have a job, and you probably do need a job. Okay, it's also similar to like crime. I talked to a friend of mine who's a sheriff in LA County, and I was like, he was expressing frustration over these criminals who are just let go right away. They steal things, they rob things, they destroy property, and they're just like released on the street. And I was like, why is this happening? It's like, well, if you don't arrest people and you don't lock people up, then you can't say that criminal activity is high. You can say that crime is down, because technically if you're not arrested, then crime is not happening. It's like a manipulation. But when you talk to people, go out on the street, talk to people, especially small business owners, talk to them. Don't tell me that inflation numbers are down, because I go to the store and I see the prices. Okay. I talk to people who own businesses all the time. I talk to a lot of people. That's what I do with my social media channels, is I connect with people. I use it as a social network. And things are not going well for a lot of Americans. So the optimism of bringing in a business-minded person, someone who says put America first, is something that people are excited about. I was at the Reagan Library 2 days ago, and it was really interesting because the Make America Great Again thing is part of like a Reagan speech. And there was also something at the Reagan Library where it was a campaign slogan from 1980 when he was running against Jimmy Carter. And it said, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" That's exactly the phrasing and the language that was used in this past election. So the feeling that I'm getting right now is very similar to a Reagan-ish feeling of going back to business. Now, when you look at Reagan, there was thriving economy in a lot of ways, but then a lot of government programs that helped like the needy, the mentally ill, and things like that, those went away. So it wasn't all good during Reagan either. And I think that there's a concern about that happening during Trump. Is like, what about the most desperate, destitute, needy people of this country? Who's going to look out for them? You might say, well, it wouldn't be the Democrats either. Yeah, probably not. Probably not. But just because one side's not doing it doesn't mean the other side, not doing it is okay. So we do need to look out for the bottom of the socioeconomic hierarchy of this country. Also, one of the things I thought about when I was at the Reagan Library is what will the Trump Library look like? Because when I went to the Republican National Convention, it was really interesting how people had a really good sense of humor about Donald Trump, like making fun of him and stuff. It'd be funny if the Trump Presidential Library like didn't have a lot of books. It just had like Fox News playing or like gold toilets. I don't know. But I don't know how much Trump reads. I don't know. I don't really know a lot of. I think that he is a great marketer. I think that he has a big ego. I think that he wants to be successful, probably for himself, but he wants to be successful. And I think he's probably great at sales, and he's good at winning. He's just good at winning. 2-time president, multi-billionaire. He's winning. He's winning at a lot of things, so he knows how to win. So I think that can be inspiring for a lot of Americans, because Americans like winners. But when it comes to the economy being down, like, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? It's a global thing, but then again, we kind of steer the globe. So it's not just an American thing, but it also kind of is an American thing. But I think it's a COVID thing. Like when you celebrate people not working, that's a problem. That's a real problem. When you attack things with like the DEI stuff, there are elements of that are a real problem for an economy. When you're not feeding into the idea of a meritocracy. Now, meritocracy is complicated, okay? Because we're not equal in the resources that we have, that we're born into. I've taught in very poor communities. I've taught in very wealthy communities. I see the difference, okay? But the idea of a meritocracy and working towards having one should be the goal. It should be the goal, that we want the best and brightest in these positions of power. Now, again, do you want the brain surgeon that was from a hard background and worked their way up to be a B+ student? Or do you want the brain surgeon that was handed everything in life, but was still able to get A+ on the tests? I just want the best for the job, in a lot of jobs that are very important. But the economy is not doing well for a lot of people. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why Donald Trump was brought in. I think that people have finally woken up to like the woke stuff, the stuff that I've been talking about for a long time, since like 2017, 2018, very publicly, when I was one of the only people in education that was talking about the negatives of it. I think that people have finally woken up to like, okay, this has gone too far. And I think that Trump is a statement about the dangers of DEI, CRT, woke stuff. But, you know, when it comes to Trump being optimistic, I am glad to see people like Tulsi, you know, Tim Kennedy, Jordan Peterson, you know, RFK Jr. You know, these are people that I'm glad to see, you know, here in the conversation. You know, they're like people that I, to some degree, you know, trust and believe have a good head on their shoulders. And, you know, like there's people like Conor McGregor and the Paul brothers and like, and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, it's kind of like the Gilded Age, you know, like these are people who are very, very wealthy people. There's a lot of very wealthy people at this. And it's important that people that can't get in these rooms and aren't super wealthy are also represented by our government. And you can say, well, wealthy people give to charities. I know. A lot of wealthy people do tremendous good. I know. So let's promote that. That's what we want. But it does concern me when at the inauguration is Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai so Elon Musk who runs Tesla, richest man in the world, then Sundar Pichai who runs Google, Mark Zuckerberg who runs all these other media channels, you know, like Meta and Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. Jeff Bezos running Amazon, he's there. Sam Altman who runs ChatGPT. I mean, these are the richest people in the world, and they're all in like a line, really excited for Donald Trump. And then you have all these rich celebrities who are really excited for Donald Trump. So maybe it's just that they are committed to the American dream and they've worked hard and they want other people to be able to be committed to the American dream too. Maybe. But as a US history teacher, I teach the Gilded Age, which is, you know, like the time around the turn of the century when there was tremendous wealth being built in America. You know, the Rockefellers, Carnegies, JP Morgans, Vanderbilts, you know, all this massive wealth. But it was called Gilded Age by Mark Twain, essentially because it looked like it was golden. It was like gold plated. Underneath, there was a lot of really nasty, dangerous stuff that was revealed by people called muckrakers who were, you know, Jacob Riis or Ida Tarbell. You know, these people who realized that this wealth was built on the backs of a lot of people. And at the time it was immigrants. You know, there are issues around the way Amazon is run. You know, there's issues around the way that electric cars are built with the cobalt mines in the Congo and things like. At what expense do these people have hundreds of billions of dollars? You know, it can be that a high tide raises all ships and certain ships get raised more than others, but it can also be that these people, to raise their shareholder value and to get into this weird pissing contest of who can have a bigger yacht, do terrible things to their employees and manipulate systems. Like they manipulate systems. I heard a story about how Amazon employees were striking in like one area, and Jeff Bezos pulled some strings and he basically changed the timing of a traffic light. So they were on the street with picket signs. And when people were at stoplights, they would say like, you know, give Amazon workers better wages, better conditions. And he made a call to shorten the time of that red light. So they have less time to look. Like you are in with the president, you are in with the national government. Of course, you're going to manipulate the system to be in your best interest. Of course, anyone would do that. Okay. Like I run an education platform called Paradox. If I had an in to Donald Trump and a bunch of really powerful people, I would say, hey, you know what? Let's bring critical thinking into every classroom. Let's make it mandatory. I believe in critical thinking. I deeply believe in critical thinking. I deeply believe in viewpoint diversity. I think it's extremely important. It's why I have devoted my life at this moment to this platform, this education platform that I have, is I would make a call to Donald Trump and say like, hey, we got to get this in every classroom. Let me convince you why. He would go, oh, okay, sounds good. And then he would mandate it across the board. And that would bring me billions of dollars potentially. Okay. Doesn't mean I don't believe in it. I think Jeff Bezos believes in it. I think Elon Musk believes in it. I think Mark Zuckerberg believes in it. But when they are deeply connected with government, they're going to do what's in their best interest. And I know they believe it, but is that necessarily good? And it is clearly, based on access, a two-tiered system in America. And it's always been like that, but we have done things to mitigate that too. After the Gilded Age and the deep connection that these robber barons, as they call them, had to people in government, what they did was they, instituted the progressive era, which had some negative things to it for sure, but it also had some positives of bringing in things like better working conditions, fire exits, workers' compensation, child labor laws, and stuff like that. Like that stuff's important. It's good. So I do worry about that element. We the people must hold Trump accountable to the people. It can't just be that things are good for the uber rich. It has to be that things are good for the average, everyday American citizen in the middle class, the working class, and even the impoverished. Things have to get better. This has to be a tide that raises all ships. It has to be, okay? And if you notice or you experience something that's not, then you have to get your voice out there. You have to share these stories, and you have to do your best to hold people to account. That's really, really important. That's the criticism of Donald Trump. I think that's very valid. But the last thing I'll say is this. When Trump was elected in 2016, there were some teachers at my school that were crying and some students that were crying. And what I said to them was, look, what is Donald Trump going to do that's going to prevent you from doing amazingly good things in the world? If you can't name them, then go out and do amazingly good things in the world. Okay? If you're happy about Donald Trump being in office, go out and crush it, go contribute, go build a beautiful life of meaning, because now, you have, a lot of control over the government. The person you wanted in is in, great. And if you are upset, then just go be the change you wish to see in the world, as Gandhi said. Like, go out and do the things. And if the Trump administration stops you from doing tremendous good, that's the whole point of America, is that the Constitution stops an overreach of government from you, getting control over you to prevent you from doing good in the world. It's not like you have the freedom of speech to say terrible things. Of course you do, but that's not the way to think about it. It's the government can't stop me from saying good things or true things. That's the issue. So regardless of where you stand on Donald Trump, I would just say, use this energy to go out and do great things in the next couple of years of this country. It could be a pivotal turning point, and you could have wonderful parents, and because of that, you go out and be successful, or you could have terrible, abusive parents, and because of that, you go out and you build a beautiful life because you know what not to do. You have great parents, you know what to do. You have terrible parents, you know what not to do. And the same thing can apply for our government. So don't let the government stop you from doing tremendous good, okay? Thank you so much for listening. If you believe in critical thinking and you want access to more of what I'm doing, interact with me more, or if you have kids who are of middle school or high school age and you think that this kind of nuance is important for them, please check out all of my resources at Patterdocs. Patterdocs is my online supplemental education company. We have a Patterdocs Roundtable private discussion group where we can have a whole bunch of different viewpoints and discuss issues with Zoom meetings where we see each other face to face, and a Telegram channel where we can just work out ideas. And it's an environment of understanding and curiosity, which is really beautiful. And then my online education platform, Patterdocs, where I have U.S. history classes, civics classes, sociology classes, and there are recorded classes. There's all kinds of different resources, assignments, there's quizzes, there's projects, and you also get access to me to help you with whatever educational needs that you have. So those are some resources that I have that I definitely want you to check out. Also, if you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe to my YouTube channel as I grow the YouTube channel to get more nuanced conversations out there, so it's not just clickbaity one side or the other. I know that you might be like me. There are people out there that are like me, which is like, I don't like just Republican stuff or just Democrat stuff. I'm kind of politically homeless in the middle. Well, this can be a place for you. So thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.